Hello and welcome to the Peacekeeper Project. My name is Ben. Do you trust your intuition? On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not at all and 10 being completely, how much do you trust your intuition? And would you follow what it tells you? Now, wherever you fall on that scale, today I want to share with you something that might be getting in the way of you trusting and following your intuition. Because how often have you had an intuitive knowing about something, but then you ignored it? Maybe you were invited out somewhere, but something didn't quite feel right. You had a feeling about it, but you really wanted to go, and maybe it was pre-planned. So you ignored it, you dismissed it, your intuition, maybe you rationalized it away, and you went anyway, only later to realize why you shouldn't have gone. And afterwards, you're thinking to yourself, I knew I shouldn't have gone. I had a feeling. And it's frustrating, right? We want something, but then we knew it wasn't right. We knew we shouldn't have gone. So why don't we listen? Why don't we listen to our intuition? Well, one of the reasons why we don't follow our intuition is because we don't like what it tells us. Has something like that ever happened to you? You wanted to do something or you planned something, but something didn't feel quite right. But you did it anyway, and it didn't turn out well. Now, I know that when I've reflected on times when I didn't follow my intuition, it didn't usually turn out that well. And I'd like to say that I couldn't have really known until after the fact, but that's not true. Some part of me did know, but I didn't listen. Now, it can also be that we have an intuitive thought or impulse, and it's inconvenient. We're just lazy. So maybe someone has this thought coming to their mind, oh, I need to get my winter tires put on. And they kind of ignore it. It comes up again, they ignore it, they don't get it done, and it starts snowing. And then they have to drive out on the highway and they have an accident. So intuition doesn't always come banging on the door. Intuition has a gradient from really subtle to obvious. Sometimes it's just a subtle thought of, I need to do this. Now, maybe it's in a relationship. Maybe something just doesn't feel right, and there's this impulse, intuitive impulse, to say something. You need to say something, but you don't, because you're worried about where it might lead or what it might mean. But of course, here we also have to be discerning and understand the difference between intuition and an emotional reaction projecting out onto someone or something into the situation. But that's probably a topic for another time. But the main point I want to make for this video is that learning to trust your intuition means that you may not like what it has to tell you. So what can you do with this? Well, firstly, it's an invitation to really be clear about your intention. Your intention to want to trust your intuition to a greater level than whatever level that you're at right now. Because that's why you're here, right? You're listening to this or watching this for a reason. Something brought you here. Some part of you wants to deepen your intuition. And it's really more than that. It's about reconnecting to something deep inside you, some wisdom inside you. Something beyond your ordinary, rational thinking mind. So there's an intention there. So what do you do with it? Well, start paying attention to when you have an intuitive thought, impulse, or insight that conflicts with something that you want. Now, if something doesn't feel right and you can't quite make sense of it, you don't understand it, just be curious. Start to feel it. Notice it in your body. So just be quiet and feel it. Because intuition feels different to a reaction to it. So there is an intuitive thought or an impulse, and then there is a reaction. And they feel different. So feel it in your body, in your energy. When we have a reaction, when we don't like something, usually there's a quality of grasping or contracting in our energy. And we can feel that if we pay attention to it. Whereas the intuition has a certain flow, has a certain knowing. It's not necessarily emotional. We can get emotional about it, but then the intuitive knowledge isn't necessarily emotional. But when we have an intuitive thought that we don't necessarily like, it can also feel uncomfortable. So not because the intuition is uncomfortable, it's about how we react to it. Because being confronted by an intuition that's contrary to the things we want can be uncomfortable. It can even feel like there's a conflict inside us because there's something that we want and we feel that. And yet there's this other feeling inside us that's pointing towards something else. And we may not understand it and it can feel uncomfortable. But it's not that there's something inherently wrong with the thing that we want. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. Maybe it is for you, maybe it's not for you. But maybe it's just not the right time. Or maybe it's going to come in another way, another version of it that we can't comprehend with our ordinary thinking mind. But that's where intuition comes in. It's tapping into resources that's much greater than our limited thinking mind. But when you feel that conflict between the thing you want and something your intuition is saying, just notice it, just feel it. I'm going to point you to another video that I made a while ago now, understanding change and why it can be uncomfortable and painful at times. In that video, I talked about the discomfort that can come with change in much more depth. And it's relevant here because what we're talking about here is something really needs to change. Because when we can't trust our intuition or we don't like what it's saying and we disengage from it, something in us needs to change so that we can trust it and follow it. So I'll leave links in the description below and at the end of the video. And I highly recommend that you check that out. Now, the last thing I want to say is, as you practice trusting your intuition, try not to judge yourself because sometimes you will follow it, sometimes you won't. But those times that you don't, you really know what you did. And you can reflect on when you had that intuitive thought and what was going on inside you when you chose not to do it. So they can be powerful learning times too. So don't judge yourself. Just have a playful attitude and engage curiosity, because curiosity is really this spark of enthusiasm to want to know and to understand. That's really helpful with understanding anything about ourselves, including our intuition. All right, now let me know in the comments below. Was this video helpful and did it make sense? And let me know, what challenges have you had with your intuition? Where did you not want to follow it? All right, now I'm going to wrap this one up. But thank you for being here, and I appreciate your presence. Until the next time, quiet your mind and live from your heart.